Hey guys, tonight we're embarking on a journey that's less about explosive battles and more about the quiet hum of ancient wisdom. We're stepping back way back to the heart of a continent that's as old as time itself, a place where the whisper of the wind through eucalyptus leaves held secrets to survival and healing. Imagine, if you will, the vast red earth stretching out unbroken by concrete or power lines. Just the endless, shimmering horizon under a sun that's been baking this land for millennia? You're there perhaps barefoot, feeling the cool dust between your toes, surrounded by sounds you've never heard before. The distant cry of a dingo, the rustle of some unseen creature in the scrub, the buzzing symphony of insects. This isn't a walk in your local park. This is a landscape brimming with life, beauty, and, let's be honest, probably a dozen ways to instantly regret your footwear choices. And just a cheeky thought, if you were dropped into this scene with only your phone and a charger, you probably wouldn't survive the first sunrise without some serious primal panic kicking in. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And, hey, if you're up for it, drop a comment below. And let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself in a landscape that has for an astonishingly long time been home to people whose connection to it runs deeper than any modern mind can easily comprehend. We're talking about the Indigenous Australians, whose continuous cultural heritage stretches back by some estimates over 65,000 years. That's not just a long time. It's a mind-boggling expanse of human existence, a testament to resilience, and an unparalleled understanding of their environment. For context, the pyramids of Giza are what a mere 5,000 years old Indigenous Australian history makes those look like fresh paint. This wasn't just a place they lived on. It was an extension of their very being, a living, breathing entity that provided everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Shelter, spiritual connection, food, and crucially for our journey tonight, medicine. You're not strolling into a pristine, manicured garden here. No, this is the wild, untamed Australian bush, a place where every plant, every insect, every rock tells a story. And for countless generations, Indigenous Australians learned to read these stories. They observed, they experimented, they remembered. They didn't have a doctor's office on every corner, obviously. No pharmacies with smiling pharmacists. No blister packs of ibuprofen. No quick fixes for the common cold that suddenly feels like the plague. Their healthcare system was, well, it was the land. It was the vast, sprawling, often unforgiving, yet incredibly generous land. You'd be surprised what you can learn when your survival literally depends on knowing which berry won't send you on a trip to the afterlife, and which leaf might actually stop that nasty cut from festering. It's like the ultimate high-stakes trivia game where the prize is not dying. Think about it for tens of thousands of years. Every ache, every pain, every fever, every snake bite, every sprain had to be addressed with what was immediately available. And what was available was the bush. This deep, intimate knowledge of plants, animals, and even minerals wasn't just passed down like a recipe book. It was woven into their dreaming stories, embedded in their ceremonies, sung in their songs. It was a living, evolving encyclopedia of remedies, tried and tested through generations. You wouldn't find a glossy medical textbook out here, but you'd find a wisdom far older, etched into the very memory of the land and its people. This isn't just about foraging for sustenance. It's about understanding the subtle language of the bush to heal, to mend, to sustain life. Take, for instance, the sheer ingenuity required. You don't just pick a leaf and hope for the best. You need to know when to pick it, how to prepare it. Perhaps roasting it over coals, crushing it into a paste, or brewing it as a tea. It's a bit like trying to bake a cake for the first time without a recipe, except if you get it wrong, you don't just get a bad cake, you get, well, let's just say a very, very upset digestive system. The bush wasn't just a pantry, it was a laboratory, a pharmacy, and a hospital all rolled into one. And the practitioners were the custodians of this unparalleled knowledge people who had spent their entire lives immersed in its intricacies. They were the original scientists, the original doctors, long before those terms even existed. One of the most fascinating aspects of this ancient wisdom is how they utilized plants that might seem utterly benign to our modern eyes. You're walking past a bush, perhaps a wattle, and you might think, oh, pretty yellow flowers. But to the discerning eye of an indigenous healer, that wattle held secrets. For example, the gum from certain acacia species like the golden wattle or blackwood was often used as a mild antiseptic or to soothe irritated throats, a sort of natural cough drop. It's sticky a bit like a hardened resin, and while you might assume it's just well gum, its properties were well understood. It's certainly more proactive than just hoping your sore throat goes away on its own, which, let's be honest, is what most of us do until it's absolutely unbearable. This isn't just a quirky tidbit. It highlights the deep observation that went into every single resource. They didn't just stumble upon these things, they learned them through trial and error, yes, but also through an incredible capacity for observation and memory. Now, historians still argue whether the depth of botanical classification in some indigenous groups rivaled early Linnaean systems or developed along entirely different practical pathways. While they didn't have a formal binomial nomenclature like Homo sapiens or Eucalyptus globulus, their knowledge of plant species, their specific uses, and their ecological niches was incredibly sophisticated. They had names for plants, not just generic terms, but names that often described their properties, their location, or their seasonality. It wasn't about a scientific hierarchy for categorization. It was about a functional, practical understanding that enabled survival and healing. It's like knowing every single ingredient in your pantry by heart, not just by its supermarket category. You see, for these ancient Australians, health wasn't just the absence of disease. It was a state of balance, of connection. It was about being in harmony with the land, with the dreaming, and with your community. When that balance was disturbed, whether by a physical ailment or spiritual malaise, the answer often lay in restoring that connection. And the land was the primary facilitator. It wasn't about isolating a single active compound in a lab. It was about understanding the holistic effect of a plant, its spirit, and its place in the ecosystem. It's a far cry from popping a pill and expecting miracles, though. To be fair, sometimes a modern pill feels like a miracle, especially at 3 a.m. with a migraine. The sheer effort involved in maintaining this ancestral knowledge is staggering. Imagine having to memorize every medicinal plant, every edible root, every poisonous berry, not just for your immediate family, but for your entire community, across a vast and varied landscape. And then transmitting that knowledge flawlessly across generations without a single written word, without YouTube tutorials or Wikipedia. You couldn't just look up how to treat a snake bite with bush medicine on your phone. You had to learn it from your elders through direct experience, through stories, through songlines. It's almost like trying to master a complex video game without any in-game tutorials, just your super experienced older cousin whispering hints in your ear, and the stakes are real. This understanding also meant recognizing that the land itself had a cycle, a rhythm. You couldn't just go out and harvest anything anytime. You had to know when a plant was potent, when its berries were ripe, when its leaves were at their most effective. It was a symbiotic relationship, a give and take, ensuring that the resources were never depleted, that the natural pharmacy remained well stocked for future generations. This wasn't just sustainable living. It was living within the rhythm of the land, respecting its generosity and its limitations. Modern agriculture could probably learn a thing or two from this ancient wisdom, though I doubt singing to your crops will catch on at the next G20 summit. As you settle deeper into this ancient narrative, remember you're not just learning about plants, you're learning about a profound way of life, a deep, resonant wisdom that echoes through the ages. As you continue to drift through this ancient landscape, leaving behind the abstract concept of land as medicine, you now begin to appreciate the sheer bewildering complexity of the bush pharmacy itself. This isn't just about finding a useful leaf here or there. It's about navigating a living, breathing, natural dispensary filled with thousands upon thousands of species each, with its own unique properties, its own secrets whispered by the wind, and revealed by careful observation. You're not just looking for a cure. You're looking for the cure hidden in plain sight among countless other plants that might do absolutely nothing or worse, make things significantly more interesting in the wrong way. It's like trying to find one specific herb in a supermarket where all the labels are written in hieroglyphs and you don't speak ancient Egyptian. Good luck with that. For countless generations, Indigenous Australians developed an intricate pharmacopoeia, identifying and utilizing thousands of plant species for medicinal purposes, a body of knowledge passed down orally with remarkable fidelity. This wasn't some haphazard collection of folklore. This was a systematic, albeit non-Western approach to understanding botanical chemistry and pharmacology. They knew which plants would induce sweating to break a fever, which would calm an upset stomach, or which would bring down swelling. They understood that different parts of the same plant could have entirely different uses. The bark might be good for one thing, the leaves for another, the roots for a third, and the flowers simply for looking pretty. Which, let's be honest, is a pretty important job too. Imagine the trial and error involved, the painstaking process of discerning between a healing balm and something that just makes you regret your life choices. It wasn't always a walk in the park. You'd need an incredible memory and a deep respect for the lessons of your elders. No quick Google search, no handy WebMD Bush Edition app. You had to learn by watching, by listening, and by doing often with consequences far more dramatic than a bad internet review. This intricate system of knowledge accumulation and transmission is what truly defines this bush pharmacy. It wasn't a single monolithic system across the entire continent either. Different language groups and clans had their own specific knowledge honed over millennia within their own distinct territories and ecosystems. You might be wondering, how did they know? How did they distinguish between a plant that would provide pain relief and one that would provide, well, a permanent dirt nap? Part of it was observation, watching animals, seeing what they ate when they were sick, or what they avoided. Part was inherited wisdom passed down through the generations, refined and tested over thousands of years. And part, no doubt, was careful, methodical experimentation, perhaps cautiously applying a paste to a minor wound, or tasting a tiny bit of a leaf to discern its properties, always with an elder's watchful eye and accumulated wisdom to guide the process. It's not exactly a double-blind placebo study, but when your life depends on it, you learn to be a pretty sharp empiricist. Consider the sheer range of conditions they addressed. You're not just looking at a few basic remedies here. We're talking about treatments for everything from aches and pains, colds and fevers, skin infections, wounds, burns, insect bites, snake bites, digestive issues, eye problems, and even what we might now term psychological or spiritual ailments. The bush was literally teeming with potential solutions. You just had to know where to look, and more importantly, how to use them. It's a bit like having an entire IKEA store at your disposal, but instead of flat-pack furniture, it's all raw botanical materials, and you have to figure out how to build a functioning kidney from a gum leaf and a bit of bark. Okay, maybe not that extreme, but you get the idea. One fascinating example of the ingenuity involved is the use of native mint Mentha australis. Now, you might think of mint as something you put in your mojito or toothpaste, and yes, Indigenous Australians definitely appreciated its aromatic qualities. But beyond that, they knew it had potent insect-repelling properties when crushed and rubbed on the skin. So while you're battling mosquitoes with your citronella candle and a prayer, they were simply reaching for a bush. But here's the quirky bit: it was also recognized for its ability to soothe stomach upsets and respiratory issues when brewed as a tea. One plant, multiple uses, almost like a Swiss Army knife of the plant kingdom. It just goes to show that sometimes the most mundane-looking plants hold the most surprising powers. You just have to listen to the land. The way this knowledge was classified and remembered was incredibly complex even without written language. Instead of shelves of alphabetically organized books, you had an entire community, an entire landscape acting as a living library. Stories, songs, and ceremonies were mnemonic devices embedding critical information about plant locations, seasons, and uses directly into the cultural fabric. It ensured that the knowledge was not just retained, but was actively reproduced and reinforced with each generation. This intricate system allowed a mainstream historical fact to shine through. For countless generations, Indigenous Australians developed an intricate pharmacopoeia, identifying and utilizing thousands of plant species for medicinal purposes, a body of knowledge passed down orally with remarkable fidelity. This level of precision and retention across such a vast timeline is truly breathtaking. Sometimes the lines between food and medicine blurred, which makes perfect sense when you consider a holistic view of health. Many bush foods weren't just nutritious, they had preventative or therapeutic properties. Think of certain berries packed with vitamin C acting as natural immunity boosters, or tubers providing essential minerals that kept people strong and healthy. It was the original food as medicine movement, long before it became a trendy hashtag on social media. They weren't talking about kale smoothies for gut health, but they were definitely optimizing their diets for well-being in ways we're only just beginning to rediscover. But, as with any ancient wisdom, not all the answers are definitively clear to us today. Historians still argue whether certain healing practices evolved independently across different indigenous groups, or if there was more extensive intertribal sharing of specific botanical remedies than currently understood. While some knowledge might have been localized due to specific flora trade routes, and cultural exchange likely played a significant role in the spread of remedies across vast distances. Imagine a bush medicine convention, but instead of PowerPoint presentations, it's all song dance and practical demonstrations under the stars. Sounds a bit more interesting, doesn't it? So as you continue to feel the ancient dust under your feet and the faint scent of eucalypt on the air, remember that every rustle in the leaves, every unique blossom, every gnarled root was a potential page in this vast, unwritten medical encyclopedia. It was a world where you couldn't just pop down to the chemist for a paracetamol, where a headache meant finding a specific bark, and a nasty cut meant knowing which plant sap would act as an immediate antiseptic. The level of intimate, practical knowledge required to thrive and heal in such a diverse and challenging environment is truly humbling. And it offers a gentle reminder that sometimes the oldest solutions are the most profound. As you continue your journey through the ancient Australian landscape, having explored the tangible remedies offered by the bush pharmacy, your perspective now widens. You begin to understand that for Indigenous Australians, healing wasn't merely about mending a broken bone or curing a cough with a well-chosen leaf. Oh no, that would be far too simplistic. Their understanding of health was a vast, intricate tapestry woven from the threads of body, mind, spirit, community, and the land itself. It's like discovering that your local hardware store also offers existential therapy and spiritual guidance, which, let's be honest, would probably be a massive upgrade for most of us after a particularly frustrating flat pack furniture assembly. For Indigenous Australians, health was intrinsically linked to spiritual well-being, community connection, and a harmonious relationship with the land, meaning healing practices often address the whole person, not just physical symptoms. When someone fell ill, it wasn't simply a physical malfunction. It was often seen as an imbalance, a disruption in the delicate equilibrium between an individual and their world. This could stem from disrespecting sacred sites, upsetting ancestral spirits, or failing to uphold communal responsibilities. So a headache might not just be a headache, it could be a cosmic warning. No amount of eucalyptus oil would fix that if the spiritual roots weren't addressed first. It put a whole new spin on doctor's orders, didn't it? You can almost feel the gentle hum of connection in the air as you consider this holistic approach. Imagine a system where your well-being was a shared responsibility, where the strength of the community directly impacted your own health. If you were sick, it wasn't just your problem. It was the community's problem, and everyone played a part in your recovery. This stood in stark contrast to the often isolated individualistic approach of modern Western medicine, where you usually just pop your pills in solitude and hope for the best. Here, you'd be surrounded by care stories and rituals, all designed to bring you back into balance. It sounds almost restful, doesn't it? The concept of the dreaming. The foundational framework of Indigenous spirituality played a crucial role in understanding health and illness. The dreaming wasn't just a collection of ancient stories. It was a living, breathing reality, a cosmic blueprint that explained the creation of the land, the laws of society, and the interconnectedness of all things. Illness could be a sign that one had strayed from the dreaming path of spiritual malaise, manifesting as a physical symptom. Imagine trying to explain that to your GP. Yes, doctor, my knee hurts because I accidentally offended a rainbow serpent in a past life. They'd probably just prescribe you stronger painkillers and a referral to a different specialist. Therefore, healing rituals were as vital as botanical remedies. You might witness a smoke ceremony where aromatic leaves and bark are carefully placed on hot coals, and the resulting smoke is wafted over the afflicted person. This isn't just about the perceived antiseptic properties of the smoke. It's a powerful act of cleansing, purification, and spiritual realignment. The smoke carries away negative energies, clears the mind, and connects the individual back to the ancestral spirits and the land. It's a truly multi-sensory experience, the smell of the burning leaves, the warmth of the smoke, the rhythmic chanting, all working in concert to restore harmony. It's a bit more involved than just having a nice hot bath, though both do have their cleansing benefits. The traditional healers, often known as Ngangkari in Central Australia, or by various other names across different language groups, were central to this holistic healing. These weren't just people who knew a lot about plants. Oh no, they were much more than that. They were custodians of ancient knowledge, spiritual guides, interpreters of dreams, and conduits to the ancestral realm. They possessed deep spiritual power, often acquired through arduous training and initiation, allowing them to diagnose not just physical ailments but also spiritual ones. They might use specific objects like quartz crystals or perform elaborate rituals to extract sickness objects from the body. It's a bit different from just checking your temperature and prescribing an antibiotic, isn't it? Their role was to identify the root cause of the imbalance, whether it was a visible wound, a lingering fever, or an invisible spiritual intrusion. And their treatments often combined the physical with the spiritual. A poultice of crushed leaves might be applied to a wound, while simultaneously chants and stories were performed to soothe the spirit and invoke ancestral healing powers. This wasn't a pick-and-mix approach. It was integrated, seamless, and deeply personal. You weren't just a collection of symptoms. You were a complex being intrinsically linked to a vast cosmic system. Historians still argue whether the perceived causes of illness were predominantly spiritual across all indigenous groups, or if pragmatic environmental factors were often given equal weight. While the spiritual dimension was undeniably profound, Indigenous Australians were also incredibly astute observers of their environment. They understood the effects of contaminated water, poor hygiene, seasonal changes, and dangerous animals. It wasn't either or, it was a sophisticated blend. A snakebite was a physical trauma, yes, but its occurrence might also be interpreted through a spiritual lens, perhaps as a warning. It's like knowing that rain makes things wet, but also that rain comes from the sky where the sky spirits live. Both can be true at once. Community gatherings, storytelling sessions around a crackling fire, and shared meals weren't just social occasions. They were integral to maintaining well-being. The act of sharing food, of sitting together and listening to ancient narratives, reinforced social bonds, reduced stress, and provided a sense of belonging that is frankly often missing in our fast-paced, individualistic modern world. You could say it was the original group therapy, only instead of a comfortable couch and a therapist asking how you feel, you had the vast Australian night sky, the warmth of the fire, and elders sharing wisdom that had kept their people thriving for tens of thousands of years. It's a lot more profound than complaining about your commute, that's for sure. This deep connection to land also played a crucial role in emotional and spiritual healing. Returning to country, walking on ancestral lands, engaging with sacred sites, these acts were profoundly restorative. The land itself held healing energy, a sense of belonging and identity that could soothe troubled spirits and strengthen one's inner resolve. It's an appreciation of nature as therapy far beyond a quick hike or a stroll in a park. It's a return to source, a spiritual homecoming. It makes you wonder if maybe some of our modern anxieties stem from being a little too disconnected from the actual dirt beneath our feet, doesn't it? So as you slowly unwind and let the quiet hum of this ancient history envelop you, remember that Indigenous Australian healing was never just about the physical. It was a complete system, acknowledging that a healthy person is a person, in balance with their body, their mind, their community, their spirit, and the timeless living land beneath their feet. It's a profound reminder that true well-being often requires looking beyond the immediate symptom and understanding the deeper currents of connection that flow through us all. As you continue to drift deeper into the quietude of this ancient narrative, having grasped the holistic dance of body, spirit, and land, your focus now shifts to the central figures in this intricate system. The traditional healers themselves. These weren't just individuals who happened to know a lot about plants. They were deeply respected, highly trained specialist conduits between the human and spiritual worlds, and the absolute bedrock of their community's health. Think of them as the original holistic practitioners, shamans, and diagnosticians all rolled into one incredibly wise and often very quiet person. No fancy white coats or sterile examination rooms, just an innate understanding of the world and a profound connection to its unseen forces. Traditional indigenous healers known by various names such as Ngangkari in Central Australia, or as clever people, or medicine men, women in other regions, were highly respected figures within their communities possessing profound knowledge of both herbal medicine and spiritual healing practices passed down through generations. The path to becoming such a healer was rarely a casual career choice. It was often a calling involving arduous spiritual journeys, profound dreams, and years of intense mentorship under an established elder. You couldn't just sign up for a weekend workshop on Bush Healing 101. This was like getting your PhD medical degree in spiritual enlightenment all at once with the added pressure of potentially having to face down an angry ancestral spirit if you messed up. When someone in the community fell ill, their first port of call wasn't a clinic, but to seek out the healer. And the healer's diagnostic methods were far more expansive than a simple physical checkup. While they were incredibly observant of physical symptoms, a swollen limb, a feverish brow, a persistent cough, their diagnostic lens extended far beyond the visible. They would also observe the patient's behavior, their emotional state, and even listen to their dreams. Illness could manifest from many sources of physical injury, an imbalance in diet exposure to extreme weather, or crucially a spiritual transgression, or the malevolent influence of another being or spirit. It was a bit like your doctor not just asking about your diet, but also if you've had any weird dreams lately, or if you've been unintentionally upsetting any ancient deities. Suddenly that annual physical gets a lot more interesting. Imagine the scene: you're sitting with the healer perhaps by a slow-burning fire, the air thick with the scent of smoldering eucalyptus leaves. They might gently touch you, not just to feel for physical pain, but to sense energetic blockages or imbalances. They might gaze deeply into your eyes, not just looking for signs of fatigue, but for reflections of your spirit. The diagnostic process was often intuitive, drawing on generations of inherited wisdom, personal spiritual insight, and a deep empathy for the patient. They weren't just treating symptoms, they were seeking the root cause, whether it resided in the body, the mind, or the spirit. One of the most fascinating aspects of their toolkit, particularly among some Ngangkari, was the use of quartz crystals. These beautiful clear stones were believed to possess immense spiritual power, acting as conduits for healing energy and as diagnostic tools. A healer might hold a crystal and see the illness within the patient, perhaps visualizing it as a dark intrusion or an imbalance of energies. They might then use the crystal to extract the sickness from the body sometimes, through a process involving massage suction or spiritual manipulation. It's a truly quirky tidbit, distinct from modern medical instruments, yet profoundly effective within their belief system. It makes you wonder if our modern MRI machines are just really high-tech, less shiny versions of these ancient power stones. Probably not, but it's a nice thought. Once the diagnosis was made, whether it was a broken bone, a persistent cough, or a spiritual malaise causing listlessness, the administration of remedies was equally nuanced. For physical ailments, the healer would draw upon the vast knowledge of the bush pharmacy we touched upon earlier. This could involve preparing poultices from crushed leaves or bark, brewing specific herbal teas, creating soothing balms from plant resins mixed with animal fats, or administering specific bush foods known for their medicinal properties. These remedies were prepared with care, sometimes accompanied by chants or rituals to imbue them with further healing power. But the healer's role went beyond just herbal prescriptions. For spiritual or emotional imbalances, the remedies might involve storytelling, ceremonial cleansing, guided meditation, or even direct spiritual intervention to remove negative energies or restore a lost part of the soul. They might conduct specific smoke ceremonies using the cleansing properties of particular plants to purify the individual and their surroundings. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen? No, not really, but imagine if it was a sacred healing balm. No kidding. Kidding. But the point is, their methods were diverse and comprehensive. The respect and trust afforded to these healers within their communities was immense. They were not just health practitioners, but cultural anchors, advisors, and spiritual leaders. Their wisdom was revered and their counsel sought for all matters of life, not just sickness. Their knowledge was considered sacred, often passed down through a very select few, ensuring its purity and effectiveness. You can imagine the lineage of such knowledge stretching back thousands of years each generation, adding their own observations and wisdom, meticulously refined and tested. It's like a secret family recipe, except instead of a delicious cake, it's a cure for what ails you, and the recipe could literally mean life or death. This rigorous training and deep spiritual connection also meant that the healer often faced immense personal responsibility. They were expected to be emotionally and spiritually robust, capable of absorbing and processing the illnesses and suffering of their community. It wasn't a 9 to 5 job, it was a lifelong commitment, a profound dedication to the well being of their people. Modern doctors might complain about long hours, but imagine taking on the spiritual burdens of an entire clan with no real days off. Historians still argue whether the perceived efficacy of these spiritual healing methods derived purely from a strong placebo effect, or if cultural belief systems themselves facilitated tangible physiological responses. While modern science acknowledges the power of the placebo effect and the mind-body connection, the depth of spiritual conviction within indigenous healing traditions suggests a much more profound interplay. It prompts us to consider that our current understanding of healing might be limited by our own cultural frameworks. After all, if you truly believe a spiritual cleansing will cure you, who are we to say it won't? The human mind is a powerful thing, capable of wonders. So, as you slowly unwind and let the quiet hum of this ancient history envelop you, remember the seeker-healer-diagnoser, the traditional indigenous healer. Their profound understanding of the bush, their deep spiritual connection, and their unwavering commitment to their communities allowed them to heal not just bodies, but spirits, fostering a sense of holistic well-being that resonates even today. It reminds us that medicine at its heart is about connection, understanding, and a profound respect for the intricate balance of life. As you continue to feel the ancient rhythms of the land, having witnessed the profound wisdom of the traditional healers and their holistic approach, you now begin to appreciate the gritty hands-on artistry of their craft. It's one thing to know which plant holds healing power. It's another entirely to know how to coax that power out, transforming raw botanical matter into a potent remedy. This is where the kitchen chemistry of the bush comes into play, a sophisticated dance of intuition, empirical knowledge, and meticulous preparation, long before anyone ever donned a lab coat or worried about sterile environments. No fancy beakers or Bunsen burners, just ingenuity born of necessity, and an intimate understanding of nature's subtle reactions. Indigenous Australians employed sophisticated preparation techniques, including poultices, infusions, and topical rubs, to extract and concentrate the medicinal properties of bush plants, demonstrating an empirical understanding of plant chemistry. Imagine trying to develop a painkiller when your only tools are a few stones of fire and the vast, often unforgiving Australian bush. It's not like you could just check the active ingredient list on the back of the packet. You had to learn through generations of careful observation and meticulous trial and error which parts of a plant were effective when they were most potent and exactly how to prepare them to ensure their therapeutic benefits. This wasn't guesswork. It was a deeply practical, highly refined science. Take, for instance, the ubiquitous poultice. When you suffered a cut, a bruise, or an infected wound, the healer wouldn't just hand you a leaf. They would select specific leaves, perhaps from a eucalyptus or a tea tree, crush them between stones or in their hands to release the essential oils, and then often warm them gently over coals. This warm, moist paste would then be applied directly to cuts, boils, or insect bites. The natural compounds in the eucalyptus, particularly cineole, acted as powerful antiseptics, cleansing the wound and warding off bacterial infections. They also provided a soothing, cooling sensation, much like your favorite pain relief cream, but harvested directly from the tree seconds before application. It's the original slap some mud on it, but with considerably more scientific rigor. And let's be honest, far more effective than your average clumsy attempt at a backyard bandage. Then there were the infusions and decoctions, essentially the ancient version of teas and potent brews. For internal ailments like stomach upsets, fevers, or respiratory issues, specific leaves' bark or roots would be boiled in water. An infusion involved steeping, much like making a cup of tea, allowing the beneficial compounds to dissolve into the water. A decoction, on the other hand, involved longer, more vigorous boiling, often for tougher plant materials like bark or roots to extract their deeper essences. The resulting liquid would then be drunk. Imagine sipping a bush tea knowing that thousands of years of ancestral wisdom went into perfecting that specific brew, a wisdom that likely made it taste, well, probably a bit earthy, but incredibly effective. It certainly beats a modern health supplement that tastes like chalk and regret. For topical relief such as soothing sore muscles, easing arthritic pain, or treating skin conditions, Indigenous Australians mastered the art of creating topical rubs and ointments. This often involved grinding specific plants like the emu bush into a fine powder or paste, and then mixing it with animal fat such as emu oil or kangaroo fat. The fat acted as a carrier, allowing the medicinal properties to be absorbed into the skin, while providing a soothing, moisturizing base. These balms weren't just about feeling good. They delivered potent, anti-inflammatory, and pain-relieving compounds directly where they were needed. It's like the original deep heat, but without the questionable smell or the accidental eye-rubbing incidents. And let's not forget the power of smoke. We mentioned smoke ceremonies for spiritual cleansing, but smoke was also a practical therapeutic tool. Specific leaves like those from various eucalyptus species or tea trees would be burned, and the patient would inhale the therapeutic smoke for respiratory issues like colds, coughs, or asthma. The aromatic compounds released into the air acted as natural expectorants and decongestants. It's the original vaporizer and far more aesthetically pleasing than a plastic machine hissing steam in your bedroom. A particularly intriguing aspect of this ancient kitchen chemistry is the use of heated stones in various preparation methods. For instance, sometimes a poultice might be placed on a warmed stone before application to enhance its therapeutic effect and ensure the active compounds were properly activated by the warmth. More broadly, hot stones were used in steaming processes. Water would be poured over heated stones placed in a small pit, and aromatic leaves would be added, creating a therapeutic steam bath for inhalation, particularly effective for respiratory ailments. This wasn't just about comfort. It was an ingenious way to deliver concentrated botanical vapors directly to the lungs. It's a testament to their deep understanding of thermodynamics, even if they didn't have the fancy equations to describe it. Historians still argue whether the precise techniques for extracting active compounds were discovered through deliberate iterative experimentation, or primarily through incidental observation and ancestral guidance. It's likely a combination of both. Imagine generations of skilled practitioners meticulously refining recipes, observing results, and passing down the most effective methods, all interwoven with spiritual insights and traditional narratives. It wasn't a sudden flash of genius, it wasn't an accumulation of wisdom honed over thousands of years, a testament to continuous learning and adaptation. This painstaking process is what truly defines their kitchen chemistry, far beyond mere serendipity. The tools for these preparations were simple yet effective. Grinding stones often found near water sources or in campsites were essential for crushing leaves, bark, and seeds. Bark containers or woven baskets were used for gathering and mixing. Fire, of course, was paramount, for heating water, warming plants, and creating smoke. These weren't specialized instruments forged in a factory. They were extensions of the natural environment, utilized with profound skill and respect. It really makes you appreciate your modern blender, doesn't it? Just imagine trying to make a smoothie out of tougher roots with just a couple of rocks. This level of detailed knowledge about preparation highlights a fundamental aspect of Indigenous Australian healing. It was proactive and precise. It wasn't just about having the raw materials. It was about understanding the optimal way to transform those materials into something truly effective. They knew that a leaf chewed raw might have a different effect than a leaf boiled or a leaf smoked. This empirical understanding of how different preparation methods altered the efficacy of remedies was in essence their form of pharmacology. It's a far cry from just hoping that generic cold and flu tablet actually does something, though it probably does mostly. So, as the ancient scents of healing plants mingle in your imagination, remember the sophisticated kitchen chemistry of Indigenous Australia. It's It's a tale of ingenuity, deep botanical knowledge, and the profound wisdom of transforming the raw gifts of the land into potent, life-sustaining medicine. It truly showcases that real science isn't confined to laboratories or written texts, but can flourish in the wild, guided by generations of observation and a timeless connection to nature. As you continue to soak in the ancient wisdom transitioning from the broad strokes of kitchen chemistry, your focus now sharpens on a particularly vital area of indigenous healing remedies for the external world. Living in the Australian bush with its thorns biting insects, sharp rocks, and often intense sun meant cuts, scrapes, stings, and skin irritations were a daily reality. This wasn't some gentle stroll through a botanical garden. This was a landscape that constantly tested your resilience, and without modern antiseptic wipes or band-aids, a small cut could quickly become a very serious problem. So, understanding what to do when your skin decided to part ways with the rest of your body was, let's just say, absolutely critical. Imagine for a moment you've just tripped over an unseen root, or perhaps brushed against a thorny bush, leaving an angry red scratch or a deep gash. In a world without readily available sterile bandages or antibiotic creams, infection was a terrifying and often deadly threat. This is where the Indigenous Australians' profound understanding of their immediate environment became their ultimate first aid kit. They extensively utilized plants like various eucalyptus species and melaleuca, commonly known as tea tree, for their potent antiseptic and anti-inflammatory properties, effectively treating wounds, infections, and skin irritations for millennia. These weren't just nice-smelling trees, they were living pharmacies for your skin. You'd often find the healer or perhaps a knowledgeable elder preparing a poultice from eucalyptus leaves. They would crush the fresh leaves, sometimes warming them slightly over coals, releasing those distinctive aromatic oils that we now associate with chest rubs and invigorating inhalants. This pungent green paste would then be applied directly to cuts, boils, or insect bites. The natural compounds in the eucalyptus, particularly cineole, acted as powerful antiseptics, cleansing the wound and warding off bacterial infections. They also provided a soothing, cooling sensation, much like your favorite pain relief cream, but harvested directly from the tree seconds before application. It's a bit like having an emergency department that grows on trees, literally. Similarly, the tea tree was a superstar for external applications. The leaves of various Melaleuca species, particularly Melaleuca alternifolia, the common tea tree, were prized for their remarkable antiseptic qualities. Crushed leaves would be applied directly to infections, boils, or even funguses. You could also brew a strong infusion from the leaves to use as a cleansing wash for persistent skin conditions or infected wounds. The active compounds, especially terpenin 4-ol, were incredibly effective against a broad spectrum of bacteria and fungi, long before modern science isolated them. It's almost as if nature had its own tiny organic sterilizing factory, and the Indigenous Australians knew exactly how to tap into it. Your typical antiseptic spray doesn't smell half as good either. For those irritating insect bites or rashes, which were an unavoidable part of life in the bush, other plants offered relief. Think of the intense itch of a mosquito bite or the searing pain of a green ant sting. They would turn to plants with known anti-inflammatory properties, often applying a crushed leaf paste or a soothing rub made from plant extracts mixed with emu oil. This wasn't just about stopping the itch, it was about preventing further irritation and secondary infections from scratching. It's the original itch relief, no fancy packaging required. A truly quirky and ingenious tidbit lies in the use of spinifex resin. Spinifex grasses. Triodia species are those hardy, spiky clumps you see across arid Australia. When heated, these grasses produce a sticky thermoplastic resin that indigenous people primarily used as a powerful adhesive for making tool spears and musical instruments. But here's the clever part: this resin also possesses antiseptic properties. For cuts and wounds, the sticky resin could be applied directly, forming a natural protective and antiseptic seal, effectively acting as a natural bandage or even a rudimentary form of surgical glue. It's a prime example of repurposing a resource with multiple benefits, much like how we use duct tape for absolutely everything, except Spinifex resin actually has medicinal benefits beyond just holding things together. Beyond direct application, some plants offered abrasive properties for cleansing. The leaves of the sandpaper fig Ficus coronata, for instance, are rough and textured, similar to sandpaper, hence the name. While primarily used for cleaning and smoothing wood or even skin, their abrasive nature also made them useful for gently scrubbing away dead skin or cleaning around wounds. It's a natural exfoliant and cleaner long before anyone thought of microbeads or fancy facial scrubs. Historians still argue whether the perceived antimicrobial effects were understood solely through empirical observation, or if there was an intuitive grasp of the microscopic agents causing infection. While they certainly didn't have microscopes to see bacteria, their consistent observation of which plants prevented festering wounds or sped up healing demonstrates a profound empirical understanding of cause and effect. It suggests a sophisticated knowledge system that, while not framed in germ theory, effectively achieved the same results as modern sanitation. They understood the outcome even if the how was explained through ancestral spirits rather than biochemistry. The importance of this external first aid knowledge cannot be overstated. In a world without antibiotics, preventing infection was a matter of life and death. A small scratch could turn into a life-threatening septicemia. The ability to quickly identify, prepare, and apply effective natural remedies was paramount to survival. You couldn't just pop to the emergency room for a tetanus shot. You had to rely on the wisdom of your ancestors and the pharmacy of the bush. It makes you realize how utterly reliant we are on modern medicine, and how little we know about patching ourselves up with what's literally growing under our feet. So as you drift further into the serene quiet of this narrative, imagine the feeling of a soothing poultice on a sun-drenched arm, the scent of eucalyptus clearing your senses, and the reassuring stickiness of natural resin sealing a wound. It's a testament to a people who lived in profound harmony with their environment, not just surviving within it, but thriving by understanding its deepest healing secrets, proving that sometimes the best medicine is quite literally skin deep. As you continue your gentle descent into the quiet hum of ancient history, having explored how the land offered relief for external woes, your attention now shifts inward. Because while cuts and scrapes were common, the internal workings of the body, with their mysterious aches, rumblings, and sudden fevers, presented an entirely different set of challenges. In a world without readily available probiotics, antacids or a pharmacy full of decongestants, managing internal discomforts from a gnawing stomachache to a persistent chest-rattling cough required an equally profound yet subtly different kind of botanical wisdom. This was about finding inner balance through what the bush provided, often by consuming it directly, which, let's be honest, takes a certain leap of faith when your only guarantee is ancestral knowledge. Indigenous Australians possessed extensive knowledge of internal bush medicines, effectively using plant infusions and decoctions from species like lemon myrtle and gumby to treat ailments ranging from fevers and coughs to digestive disturbances. Unlike external remedies, which you could simply apply and observe, internal medicines required a more precise understanding of dosage and the plant's effects on the body's delicate internal systems. There was no recommended daily intake written on the side of a leaf, just generations of meticulously passed down wisdom. It was a precise dance of observation and memory, ensuring that the right plant in the right quantity for the right ailment was administered. Consider the common cold or persistent cough, those universally annoying ailments that modern society battles with a dizzying array of syrups and pills. For Indigenous Australians, the solution often came directly from the majestic eucalyptus tree whose leaves we already discussed for their external antiseptic properties. But internally, the leaves, when steeped in hot water, created a potent infusion. You'd inhale the aromatic steam to clear congested airways, much like a modern vapor rub. But you might also drink the cooled infusion to alleviate coughs, sore throats, and fevers. The cineole-rich oils had natural expectorant and anti-inflammatory properties, helping to soothe irritated mucous membranes and break up congestion. It's like the original chesty cough mixture, only without the artificial cherry flavoring and the questionable list of chemical ingredients. For digestive upsets, which were likely frequent given the varied diet of bush foods and sometimes unpredictable water sources, other plants became invaluable allies. Imagine a bout of what we now call food poisoning, or just a general grumbly tummy from an unfamiliar food. This is where lemon myrtle Bacchausia citriodora stepped in. The leaves of this plant native to subtropical rainforests are incredibly aromatic, carrying a strong lemon scent due to their high citral content. Brewed as a soothing tea, lemon myrtle was effectively used to calm upset stomachs, alleviate indigestion, and even reduce fevers. Its gentle, pleasant flavor made it an accessible remedy, a refreshing balm for internal discomfort. It's a lot more natural than reaching for a fizzy antacid tablet and probably tasted better too, assuming you like lemon. Another significant plant for internal well-being was Gumby Pittosporum angustifolium. This hardy shrub found across drier parts of Australia was revered for its broad range of medicinal applications. While some uses involved external application for skin conditions, internally infusions made from its leaves were consumed to help with general internal wellness fevers, colds, and even issues like arthritis and inflammation. It was seen as a general tonic, an all-rounder for keeping the body in balance. This plant is still being studied by modern science for its potential anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory properties, suggesting that ancient wisdom often has a powerful scientific basis, even if the ancients didn't call it science. And then there's native ginger Alpinia caerulea. If you've ever had a sore throat or felt a cold coming on and reached for ginger tea, you'll intuitively understand this. The rhizome, the underground stem, similar to ginger root of native ginger, was chewed raw or brewed into an infusion for colds flu symptoms and to alleviate digestive issues. Its pungent warming properties were known to clear congestion and soothe nausea. Here's a quirky tidbit: chewing the raw rhizome would deliver a strong, spicy kick, immediately stimulating the senses and likely clearing nasal passages. It's the original wake-up call for your immune system, far more invigorating than any mild modern cough drop, and potentially leaving you with interesting breath to say the least. The precision required for internal remedies was even more critical than for external ones. A misidentified plant or an incorrect dosage could have serious, even fatal consequences. This is why the knowledge was so carefully guarded and passed down, often requiring years of apprenticeship and an immense respect for the power of the plants. You couldn't just walk into the bush and start munching on leaves hoping for the best. That's a fast track to regret and potentially a very awkward conversation with your ancestors. Historians still argue whether the effectiveness of some internal bush medicines was due to their specific biochemical properties or a broader placebo effect amplified by spiritual belief. It's almost certainly a complex interplay. While the active compounds in these plants clearly had physiological effects, the profound spiritual and communal context in which they were administered undoubtedly amplified their perceived efficacy. When you believe wholeheartedly that a remedy given by a respected healer in a sacred context will heal you, your body's own healing mechanisms are powerfully engaged. It's the ultimate mind-body connection, integrated into every aspect of their medicinal practice. The seasonal availability of these plants also played a critical role. Just as we have flu season, they had seasons where certain ailments were more prevalent, and coincidentally specific medicinal plants would be at their peak potency. This deep understanding of seasonality allowed them to gather and prepare remedies when they were most effective, ensuring their internal pharmacy was always well stocked with the freshest, most potent ingredients. It's a level of farm-to-table medicine that makes our current pharmaceutical industry look a bit factory-made. So, as the subtle aroma of imaginary lemon myrtle drifts through your mind, imagine the warmth of a bush tea soothing an upset stomach, or the clearing sensation of eucalyptus steam, easing congested lungs. This journey into the inner balance of Indigenous Australian healing reveals a profound intelligent engagement with their environment, transforming the raw gifts of the land into potent, life-sustaining remedies that brought comfort and healing from within. It's a quiet testament to their enduring wisdom, a legacy of health grown directly from the earth. As you gently drift deeper into the quietude of this ancient narrative, having explored the profound internal wisdom of the bush pharmacy, your perspective now expands to encompass yet another incredible dimension of Indigenous healing, the vital role of animal allies. Because while the plant kingdom offered an immense array of remedies, The ingenuity of Indigenous Australians extended far beyond botany, encompassing every facet of their environment. They understood that the animals sharing their land weren't just sources of food and shelter. They were also living repositories of medicinal properties, offering unique solutions for ailments that plants alone couldn't address. It's like discovering your pet dog isn't just for cuddles, but also a walking, barking, furry pharmacy. Disclaimer: do not attempt to extract medicine from your pet dog. Seriously, beyond botanical remedies, Indigenous Australians extensively utilized animal products such as emu oil and native honey for their medicinal properties, applying them topically for pain relief and skin healing, or consuming them for internal ailments. This holistic view meant that no resource was overlooked if it offered potential for healing. Their deep understanding of animal physiology and behavior allowed them to discern which parts of an animal could be beneficial and how to prepare them to maximize their therapeutic effects. This wasn't just about survival, it was about leveraging every available natural gift to maintain health and well-being. Perhaps the most famous example, even widely recognized in modern Australia, is emu oil and fat. You've probably seen bottles of it in health food stores claiming various benefits. But for Indigenous Australians, emu fat was a staple in their medicinal kit for thousands of years. Rich in anti-inflammatory compounds, it was highly prized for treating muscle aches, sore joints, and arthritic pain. Imagine a hunter after a long day trekking across uneven terrain, rubbing warm emu oil onto aching limbs. The emu fat was often rendered down, making it easier to apply, and its moisturizing properties also made it excellent for soothing dry, cracked skin or healing minor burns and sunburn. It was the original deep tissue massage oil combined with a natural moisturizer. No need for fancy spas or chemical concoctions when your local emu could provide the goods. Similarly, fat from other native animals such as goannas, large monitor lizards, or kangaroos was also used extensively. These fats shared similar properties to emu oil, acting as excellent carriers for other medicinal plant extracts when mixed to create potent balms and ointments. They also provided a protective layer on the skin, particularly useful in the harsh Australian climate. It's like having a natural, highly effective Vaseline that also comes with the added benefit of being entirely organic and ethically sourced from the bush. Then there's the incredible gift of honey, specifically from native bees. Unlike the European honeybee, Australia has thousands of species of stingless native bees that produce a distinctive, often tangy and slightly resinous honey. This isn't just a sweet treat. Native honey has potent antibacterial and antiseptic properties, much like the Manuka honey revered today. It was applied directly to wounds to prevent infection and promote healing, making it a natural dressing for cuts and abrasions. Internally, it was consumed to soothe sore throats, calm coughs, and provide a general boost of energy and wellness. It's a natural antibiotic and energy shot all in one deliciously sticky package. It makes you wonder why we bother with those sugary cough syrups when nature provides such a perfect alternative. Now, for a truly quirky and slightly jaw-dropping tidbit, the use of green ants Eucophilus maragdina. Yes, the vibrant green, often aggressive ants that build nests by stitching leaves together. For their medicinal properties, these ants were used in two remarkable ways. First, their highly acidic abdomens were consumed. Packed with formic acid, they provided a sharp citrusy burst and were a natural source of vitamin C, particularly vital in certain seasons or during periods of scarce fruit availability. It's the original sour candy, but with added health benefits and a bit of a bite. Second, and this is where it gets truly ingenious and slightly uncomfortable to imagine. For small cuts, the jaws of living green ants were used as natural sutures. The ant would be held over the wound, encouraged to bite the edges, and then its body twisted off, leaving the head and powerful jaws clamped firmly, effectively stitching the wound closed. Imagine having a cut and your doctor prescribing a live ant. You probably wouldn't survive the fear, let alone the procedure. Beyond direct animal products, naturally occurring mineral resources also played a role. Ochre and various clays abundant in the Australian landscape were often mixed with animal fats or plant extracts to create medicinal pastes. These mineral-rich substances were used for their protective soothing and sometimes drawing properties on the skin, particularly for rashes, irritations, or to clean wounds. It's the ultimate natural face mask, except it's for healing, not just Instagram likes. The earth itself provided its own unique forms of healing. Historians still argue whether the medicinal uses of animal products were discovered independently or through observed physiological effects that paralleled their human applications. While some uses like the anti-inflammatory effects of emu fat might have been observed through the animal behavior, injured animals seeking out specific foods or behaviors. Others, like the green ant sutures, suggest a highly creative and adaptive human observation and experimentation. It highlights an empirical process where direct results dictated the continued use of a remedy, regardless of a theoretical scientific explanation. The knowledge surrounding these animal-based remedies was just as meticulously passed down as the botanical wisdom. Hunters and gatherers were also healers understanding the intricate web of life and how each component could contribute to well-being. This wasn't a world of specialists, it was a world of holistic understanding where everyone knew something about the land's bounty and the healers knew everything. It reminds us that our modern separation of nature, food, and medicine is a relatively new concept. For millennia, they were simply different facets of the same profound, interconnected reality. So as you continue to relax into this ancient story, imagine the soothing relief of emu oil on tired muscles, the unique tang of native honey, or even the surprising bite of a green ant, bringing unexpected benefits. This exploration of animal allies in medicine truly underscores the unparalleled resourcefulness and deep ecological intelligence of Indigenous Australians, reminding us that sometimes the most unexpected creatures hold the keys to profound healing. As you continue your quiet descent into the vast ancient quietude of Indigenous Australia, having explored the bush pharmacy's myriad plant and animal offerings, your attention now settles on the most fundamental element of all water. In this sun-baked, often brutally arid continent, water wasn't just a commodity. It was the very essence of life, a sacred gift, and an absolutely non-negotiable component of health and survival. Without it, none of the intricate botanical knowledge or animal remedies would even matter. It's the ultimate elixir, the true foundation upon which all other well-being rested. You might take your constant access to clean running water for granted now, but imagine a world where every single drop was a precious treasure sought with reverence and guarded with utmost care. In the arid Australian environment, Indigenous communities possessed sophisticated knowledge of locating, conserving, and sustainably managing diverse water sources, which was crucial for both daily survival and maintaining health. This wasn't a matter of simply turning on a tap. It was a complex science of observation tracking and deep ecological understanding. They knew where the hidden rock holes were where seasonal billabongs would form, and how to find subterranean water filtered through sand in seemingly dry riverbeds. They literally knew the land's veins, its lifeblood, which is far more impressive than just knowing where the nearest convenience store is located. Water's role in health was multifaceted. Primarily, it was for hydration. In a land of searing heat and often long distances between water points, preventing dehydration was paramount. You wouldn't just feel thirsty, your entire body would begin to shut down. Maintaining proper hydration was a fundamental preventative medicine, ensuring organs functioned correctly and the body could regulate its temperature. Imagine the sheer, unadulterated relief of finding a fresh, cool water source after hours of trudging under the unforgiving sun. It's a feeling of profound, life-giving relief, far more potent than any cold drink you'll ever grab from a vending machine. Beyond internal consumption, water was crucial for hygiene. While concepts of germ theory were unknown, Indigenous Australians understood the importance of cleanliness. Washing wounds with fresh water was a critical step in preventing infection, even if they didn't know about bacteria. Regular bathing when water was available helped maintain skin health and overall well-being. It was a practical, empirical understanding that clean bodies tended to be healthier bodies. You wouldn't find anyone skipping their shower just because they were too busy if their shower was a pristine water hole. Water also played a vital role in the preparation and administration of remedies. Remember those infusions and decoctions we discussed? Water was the solvent extracting the medicinal properties from plants. Poultices were often moistened with water, and water was used to mix various pastes and balms. Without clean water, the very foundation of their bush pharmacy would crumble. It was the essential medium that activated and delivered many of the healing compounds. It's like having a high-tech coffee machine, but without the actual water, it's just a fancy piece of metal. Perhaps most profoundly, water held deep spiritual significance. Many waterhole springs and rivers were considered sacred sites connected to dreaming stories and ancestral beings. These places weren't just sources of drinking water. They were imbued with spiritual power believed to possess healing energies. Spiritual cleansing rituals often involved water purifying an individual and restoring balance. A dip in a sacred waterhole could be as much about soothing the spirit as it was about washing the body. Historians still argue whether the spiritual reverence for specific water sources was solely linked to their life-giving properties, or if certain sites were believed to possess unique healing energies independent of their purity. It's a fascinating question that underscores the integrated nature of their belief system. Consider the ingenuity required to locate water in times of drought. This is where the truly quirky knowledge comes in. Indigenous people knew how to access soakages, areas where underground water filtered through sand, accessible by digging shallow wells. They also knew of specific desert plants like the water mallee Eucalyptus tumosa, whose roots could store significant amounts of fresh water. By carefully digging up these roots and tapping them, they could extract life-sustaining liquid in even the most parched conditions. It's the ultimate survival skill, a level of resourcefulness that makes your emergency preparedness kit look like a child's toy. They literally knew how to get water from a rock, or in this case, a root, and did so without a single piece of modern equipment. The conservation of water was also paramount. Indigenous communities practiced meticulous water management, ensuring that precious sources were not contaminated or overused. This respect for water wasn't just practical. It was deeply ingrained in their cultural and spiritual values. They understood that their survival and the survival of future generations depended on careful stewardship of this most precious resource. You wouldn't find anyone wasting water on excessively long showers, not when every drop was a testament to the land's generosity and the knowledge of their elders. So as you envision the shimmering heat of the Australian landscape and the profound relief of finding a hidden spring, remember the sacred life-giving power of water for Indigenous Australians. It was more than just a liquid. It was a healer, a purifier, a spiritual conduit, and the very foundation of their enduring health in a challenging land. It's a humbling reminder that sometimes the simplest things are the most profound, and that true wealth lies in connection to the most vital elements of our world. As you continue your gentle journey through the ancient wisdom of Indigenous Australia, having just appreciated the life-giving essence of water, your understanding now expands to encompass the profound, overarching rhythm that governed all aspects of their existence, the seasons. But forget your simplistic notions of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. In this vast ecologically diverse continent, Indigenous Australians recognized far more than 4 seasons, often identifying 6 or even more distinct periods. These weren't just calendar dates, they were living, breathing environmental shifts dictated by specific climatic patterns, changes in flora and fauna, and guiding their resource management, including the harvest of medicinal plants. It's like having an ultra-high-definition, hyper-local weather app that also tells you when your natural pharmacy is fully stocked. Imagine living your life entirely attuned to the subtle shifts in the wind, the changing patterns of rainfall, the specific blooming of a flower, or the migratory call of a bird. For Indigenous Australians, these were not just natural occurrences. They were precise indicators signaling when certain foods were abundant, when animals were fat and ready for hunting, and crucially for our story, when medicinal plants were at their peak potency. It was a dynamic, living calendar, infinitely more complex and relevant than any Gregorian calendar you might hang on your wall. This deep ecological intelligence was woven into their very survival, ensuring that the bush pharmacy was always accessed at the optimal moment. Take, for instance, a plant whose leaves are most potent for a fever in the early dry season, but whose bark is best for digestive issues in the late wet season. Or a root that only develops its full healing properties after a certain period of intense sun. This detailed knowledge of when to harvest what and from where was critical. It wasn't just about presence, it was about potency. Just like your modern herbs and spices have a shelf life, or your fruits are best when ripe, so too did the medicinal plants of the bush have their prime moments. Trying to use an out-of-season plant for healing would be like trying to bake a cake with unripe fruit. It just wouldn't work as well and might leave you with a rather bland, disappointing outcome or worse. This intimate relationship with seasonal rhythms also fostered an inherent practice of sustainability. You couldn't just strip a tree of its bark or gather every single leaf from a plant. The knowledge of the seasons meant understanding regeneration cycles. You took only what you needed, allowing the plant to recover and flourish for future harvests. It was a reciprocal relationship the land provided, and in return it was cared for and respected. This wasn't some abstract environmental policy. It was a deeply ingrained way of life essential for ensuring that the bush pharmacy remained stocked for generations to come. It's a far cry from modern mass production, where we simply demand a continuous supply regardless of the season or the environmental cost. Different seasons also presented different health challenges which the seasonal calendar intuitively addressed. For example, a heavy wet season might bring an increase in mosquitoes and consequently mosquito-borne illnesses or irritating bites. The knowledge of that season would also reveal which plants were then abundant and most effective as natural insect repellents or anti-itch remedies. Conversely, a long dry season might mean increased risk of dehydration or certain nutritional deficiencies from scarcity of fresh produce, prompting a reliance on stored foods or particular water-storing plants. It was a finely tuned system of preventative and reactive medicine, adapted to the very pulse of the land. Here's a quirky tidbit about this seasonal wisdom. Sometimes the flowering of a seemingly unrelated plant would signal the optimal time to harvest a completely different medicinal resource. For example, in some regions, the profuse flowering of a particular Grevillea species might signal that specific bush potatoes, which were both a food source and sometimes used for their starchy, soothing properties, were at their prime. Or the call of a certain bird might tell you that the sap of a particular tree valuable for its healing properties was flowing most freely. It was a complex, interconnected ecological calendar, where all living things acted as indicators in a grand natural symphony. It's a bit like your phone reminding you to take your vitamins, except the phone is a flower and the vitamins are growing in the ground. Historians still argue whether the complex seasonal calendars were developed primarily for resource procurement, or if they held equally profound spiritual and ceremonial significance. It's highly probable that they were inextricably linked. The abundance of food and medicine was a gift from the ancestral beings of the dreaming, and the cycles of nature were seen as manifestations of those spiritual laws. So, a successful harvest wasn't just a practical achievement, it was a spiritual affirmation reinforcing their connection to the land and their cultural heritage. The utilitarian and the sacred were never truly separate. The absence of rigid cultivation methods as seen in agriculture further highlights their reliance on natural cycles. They didn't plant fields of medicinal herbs. They knew where to find them naturally growing, and they understood the conditions that favored their growth. This meant their movements, their temporary campsites, and their foraging routes were often dictated by the seasonal availability of these vital resources. They moved with the land rather than forcing the land to conform to their needs, a lesson in sustainable living that resonates powerfully in our modern, often unsustainable world. So, as you breathe in the imagined air of a crisp, dry season morning, or the humid warmth of a wet season afternoon, recognize the profound wisdom embodied in Indigenous Australian seasonal knowledge. It's a testament to their deep ecological understanding, their sustainable practices, and their unwavering connection to the land's vital rhythms, ensuring that the bush pharmacy was always open and always offering its most potent remedies year after year for millennia. It's a history that reminds us of Mother Nature's ultimate supply chain management system, perfected over eons. As you continue your tranquil drift through the vast ancient narratives of Indigenous Australia, having absorbed the rhythms of the seasons and the ingenious uses of the land's bounty, your mind now turns to a truly astounding feat: the transmission of knowledge across millennia. In a world without written language, without libraries, without the internet, or even simple notebooks, how was such an intricate, vast, and nuanced body of healing wisdom meticulously preserved and passed down for tens of thousands of years? It's a question that makes our modern methods of information storage look flimsy and fleeting by comparison. Imagine trying to explain Wikipedia to someone whose entire knowledge base is carried within the living memory of their people and the very landscape around them. They'd probably just blink at you, utterly confused by the concept of external hard drives. Indigenous Australian knowledge systems, including profound botanical and medicinal wisdom, were meticulously preserved and transmitted for tens of thousands of years through sophisticated oral traditions, intricate songlines, dreaming stories, and direct apprenticeship. This wasn't some casual campfire chat. This was a highly structured, rigorous, and deeply integrated system of education where every aspect of culture served as a mnemonic device in a classroom. Your life literally depended on how well you learned and how accurately you passed that learning on. There were no pop quizzes, just real-world consequences. One of the most powerful vehicles for this transmission was storytelling, particularly the dreaming stories. These narratives weren't just bedtime tales, they were sacred texts, encyclopedias of creation, law, morality, and practical survival. Embedded within the epic journeys of ancestral beings were details about the landscape, where to find water, when to harvest certain foods, and crucially, which plants held healing properties. A story about a particular animal's journey might indirectly lead you to a plant it interacted with, revealing its medicinal use. It's like a scavenger hunt, where the clues are ancient myths, and the treasure is a cure for what ails you. Far more exciting than just reading a dry textbook. Then there are the songlines, often described as invisible pathways across the land, connecting sacred sites and outlining the roots of ancestral beings. But here's the quirky tidbit. These songlines were far more than just navigational maps. They were complex, multi-layered mnemonic devices, veritable encyclopedias set to music. Each verse in a songline could detail specific plant locations, their seasonal readiness, and even their precise medicinal uses. Imagine a song that not only tells you where the eucalyptus trees are, but also which specific type of eucalyptus to use for a cough, when its leaves are most potent, and how to prepare them. This meant that by singing the song, you were not just navigating the land, but literally accessing a vast database of botanical knowledge. It's the ultimate Spotify playlist for survival, where every track contains life-saving information. Ceremonies and rituals were equally vital. These weren't just spiritual gatherings, they were immersive experiential learning environments. During initiation ceremonies, younger generations would participate in reenactments of dreaming stories, learning about the land, its resources, and the sacred laws governing their use. Healers would demonstrate practical applications of remedies, often accompanied by chants and dances that reinforce the spiritual and physical properties of the plants. It was hands-on learning, sensory immersion, and cultural reinforcement all rolled into one. No PowerPoint presentations, just active participation and visceral memory. You learned by doing, by experiencing, by feeling the knowledge. The apprenticeship or mentorship model was paramount, particularly for specialized knowledge like healing. Aspiring healers would spend years, often decades, under the tutelage of an elder healer. This wasn't a classroom setting, it was direct lived experience. You'd learn to identify plants in the wild, witness their preparation, observe diagnoses, and assist in rituals. It was a rigorous one-on-one transfer of wisdom, where subtle cues, unspoken understandings, and deep intuition were as important as explicit instructions. You couldn't just get a certificate online, you had to earn it through lifelong dedication and spiritual attunement. Art, too, played a role. While not a direct repository of instruction, rock art and body painting could visually represent ancestral beings, plants, and ceremonies, acting as a visual reinforcement of the stories and knowledge. The intricate patterns and symbols could subtly embed information about the land and its resources, prompting memory and reinforcing cultural understanding. It's like having a beautiful ancient infographic that reminds you of crucial survival facts instead of a boring government poster. Historians still argue whether the fidelity of oral transmission over tens of thousands of years relied primarily on strict mnemonic devices, or if constant practical re-verification in the environment was equally critical. It's likely both. The mnemonic devices provided the framework, the data points, but the continuous living with the land, the daily foraging, the seasonal harvesting, and the practical application of remedies provided constant, real-world testing and reinforcement. This iterative process ensured that the knowledge remained accurate and effective across generations, constantly refined by experience. They weren't just memorizing facts, they were living them, constantly validating them against the reality of the bush. The transmission of this knowledge was also often selective and gender-specific. Certain stories, ceremonies, and healing practices were only shared with specific individuals or groups based on their age, gender, or spiritual maturity. Sacred knowledge, particularly about powerful medicines or spiritual rituals, was often restricted, ensuring its reverence and proper use. It's not like you could just Google ancient sacred healing secrets and get all the answers. You had to earn that knowledge through years of dedication and cultural understanding. So as you listen to the imagined whispers of ancient stories carried on the wind and feel the rhythmic echo of an ancestral song, remember the extraordinary methods by which Indigenous Australians kept their healing wisdom alive. It's a powerful testament to the resilience of human memory, the ingenuity of oral traditions, and the profound, unbreakable bond between a people, their culture, and the living land that sustained them for an unimaginable span of time. It makes you reflect on just how much we rely on our written words and digital screens, and perhaps how much we might be missing from the rich tapestry of embodied living knowledge. As you continue your tranquil immersion into the profound knowledge systems of Indigenous Australia, having just reflected on the masterful ways their ancient wisdom was transmitted across millennia, your journey now takes a deeper turn, moving beyond the tangible and into the realm of the spiritual. For these ancient cultures, health and illness were rarely, if ever, seen as purely physical phenomena. Instead, they were often understood through a vibrant, intricate spiritual lens where the well-being of an individual was intrinsically tied to their relationship with ancestral spirits. Sacred sites, the dreaming and the harmonious balance of their entire world. It's like discovering your leaky faucet isn't just a plumbing issue, but a sign that you might have offended the water spirits. Suddenly fixing it involves a lot more than just a wrench. For Indigenous Australians, health and illness were often understood through a spiritual lens, with ailments potentially stemming from disruptions in one's relationship with ancestral spirits, sacred sites, or communal laws necessitating spiritual as well as physical remedies. This meant a cough wasn't just a cough. It could be a manifestation of a spiritual imbalance, a warning from an ancestor, or even the result of malevolent sorcery. Imagine the complexity of a diagnosis when your medical practitioner needs to consult not just your symptoms, but also the cosmic balance of your soul and your recent adherence to ancient laws. It makes filling out a modern medical questionnaire seem ridiculously simple. The dreaming, which we've touched upon as a framework for understanding the world, was utterly central to the spiritual understanding of health. The creation stories, the journeys of ancestral beings, and the sacred laws embedded within them provided the blueprint for a healthy life. Deviating from these laws or disrespecting sacred places could lead to spiritual imbalance, which then manifested as physical or mental illness. It was a constant reminder that your actions had cosmic repercussions, not just immediate ones. It's like a cosmic health insurance policy where good behavior is your premium. Ancestral spirits were deeply involved in this dynamic. They could be benevolent protectors, guides, and sources of healing power, but they could also be the source of illness if disrespected or if one ventured into a forbidden area. Similarly powerful dreaming figures like the rainbow serpent could bring both life-giving rain and destructive floods, symbolizing their dual nature and reminding people of the need for respect and balance. It wasn't just about avoiding a nasty bug. It was about ensuring your spiritual GPS was always on the right path. Now for a truly unsettling yet historically significant quirky tidbit, the belief that certain physical ailments or even death could be caused by pointing the bone or other forms of spiritual malevolence. This was a profound and terrifying concept within many Indigenous communities, where a sorcerer or an enemy could ritually point a bone or another object directing negative spiritual energy towards an individual, causing them to fall ill or even perish. The belief was so powerful that even without direct physical contact, the perceived spiritual attack could induce severe psychological distress and even physiological decline. And the only cure. Often the intervention of a powerful healer who could identify the spiritual intrusion and ritually extract it, restoring the victim's spirit and health. It's the ultimate example of the mind-body connection, where belief could literally be a matter of life and death. Forget your typical bad vibes, these were weaponized bad vibes. The role of the traditional healer, or Ngunkari, was paramount in navigating the spiritual landscape of health and illness. We've discussed their diagnostic skills, but in the spiritual realm, their abilities were truly profound. They were believed to be able to journey into the spiritual world, converse with ancestral beings, identify spiritual intrusions, and extract malevolent forces from a patient's body. They might use sacred objects like quartz crystals or perform elaborate rituals involving chanting, singing, and direct spiritual intervention. These weren't just symbolic acts, they were believed to be powerful, efficacious interventions to restore spiritual balance and consequently physical health. It's like having a therapist who can also perform an exorcism, which depending on your week might actually be quite useful. Ceremonies, chanting, and dance were not merely cultural expressions. They were direct forms of spiritual healing. Rhythmic chanting could induce altered states of consciousness, allowing communication with ancestral spirits or aiding the healer in their work. Dances could reenact dreaming stories, connecting individuals to their spiritual heritage and reinforcing communal bonds, which were vital for psychological and emotional well-being. These communal acts were powerful affirmations of shared identity and resilience, reminding everyone that they were part of something larger, a vast, interconnected web of life and spirit. The health of the individual was also seen as intrinsically linked to the health of the country, the land itself. A healthy, respected country meant healthy people. If the land was neglected, abused, or if sacred sites were disturbed, it could lead to spiritual imbalance for the people connected to it, potentially causing illness. Conversely, being on country, Maisha, returning to ancestral lands, engaging with sacred sites, and participating in ceremonies connected to the land, was profoundly healing for the spirit, reinforcing identity and well-being. It's the ultimate form of environmental therapy, where your personal health is directly tied to the health of the planet. Historians still argue whether the spiritual causation of illness was a universal belief across all indigenous groups, or if its emphasis varied significantly depending on local traditions and environmental contexts. While the spiritual dimension was undoubtedly fundamental to almost all indigenous healing practices, the specific interpretations, rituals, and the degree to which physical ailments were attributed solely to spiritual causes likely varied considerably across the vast and diverse continent. It's a complex tapestry of beliefs, not a single monolithic doctrine. This integration of the spiritual into healthcare contrasts sharply with the purely biomedical model prevalent in much of modern Western medicine. We tend to separate mind, body, and spirit, often treating symptoms in isolation. For Indigenous Australians, such a separation would have been unimaginable. For them, true healing meant addressing all dimensions of a person's being, restoring harmony not just within the individual, but between the individual and their entire spiritual and natural world. It reminds us that medicine can be so much more than just chemistry and biology. It can be an art, a spiritual journey, and a profound act of connection. So as you gently let your mind drift into the quiet hum of this ancient understanding, imagine a world where every ache, every sniffle, every troubling thought carried a deeper meaning, a spiritual whisper from the land or the ancestors. This profound connection between spirit sickness and the sacred offers a powerful lesson in holistic well-being, reminding us that true health resonates far beyond the physical touching, the very essence of who we are and our place in the cosmic dance. As you continue your quiet contemplation of Indigenous Australia's enduring wisdom, having navigated the immense challenges they faced and their remarkable adaptability, your perspective now shifts to the present moment. Because while ancient history might seem confined to dusty scrolls and forgotten whispers, the profound healing knowledge of Indigenous Australians is far from being a mere relic. In fact, in recent decades, there has been a burgeoning recognition and scientific exploration of these ancient remedies, creating a fascinating bridge between millennia-old traditions and cutting-edge modern science. It's like discovering that your great-great-great-great-grandparent was actually a brilliant biochemist, just without the lab coat and the fancy equipment. In recent decades, there has been a growing global recognition of the vast and valuable pharmacological knowledge embedded within Indigenous Australian traditional medicine, leading to increased scientific research into the therapeutic properties of native plants and animal products. This represents a significant shift from the colonial era when these practices were often dismissed as primitive or superstitious. Now, scientists, pharmaceutical companies, and even cosmetic industries are turning their gaze to the Australian bush, seeking to unlock the secrets held within its ancient flora and fauna. It's almost comical, isn't it? The very knowledge that was once suppressed is now being hailed as a potential source of future breakthroughs. The irony is thicker than a bush balm. You can almost feel the hum of scientific curiosity in the air as researchers painstakingly analyze compounds from plants that Indigenous Australians have used for thousands of years. Think of tea tree oil, for example. Its powerful antiseptic properties, long utilized by Indigenous communities for treating wounds and infections, are now globally recognized and commercially produced. Or emu oil, once dismissed as folklore, is now being studied for its anti-inflammatory effects and skin penetration capabilities, finding its way into various therapeutic creams. This isn't just a happy coincidence. It's direct validation of an empirical knowledge system that worked and worked effectively for countless generations. One truly quirky yet profoundly important tidbit in this modern recognition is the story of the Kakadu plum terminalia ferdinandiana. For millennia, this small green fruit was a traditional bush food consumed by indigenous people for its general health benefits. It tasted tangy, a bit sour, and was a reliable source of sustenance. What modern science has now confirmed is that the Kakadu plum possesses the highest natural vitamin C content of any fruit in the world, hundreds of times more than an orange. It's an absolute powerhouse. Indigenous Australians knew it was good for them, even if they didn't call it vitamin C or understand its exact molecular structure. They just knew it kept them healthy, especially when other foods were scarce. It's like the original superfood, but without the influencer endorsements or the ridiculous price tag. The process of bioprospecting, the search for plant and animal species that might contain medicinal compounds, is a significant part of this modern exploration. Companies and researchers are keen to identify new drugs, cosmetics, and health products. However, this raises critical ethical questions, particularly concerning intellectual property rights and benefit sharing for Indigenous communities. This is where the ancient wisdom meets the modern legal landscape. And it's a far more complex negotiation than just picking a few leaves. Who owns the knowledge? Who benefits from its commercialization? These are not easily answered questions, and conversations are ongoing to ensure fair and equitable partnerships. Indigenous communities themselves are playing a vital role in this resurgence-taking agency in the revitalization and sharing of their own knowledge. They are establishing cultural centers, leading bush medicine tours, and collaborating with researchers on their own terms. This ensures that the knowledge is shared respectfully with cultural protocols observed, and that any benefits flow back to the traditional custodians. It's a powerful act of self-determination, moving from a history of suppression to one of celebration and control over their own heritage. It's the ultimate turnaround story from silent endurance to active empowerment. You can also see this blending of ancient and modern in some contemporary indigenous health services. While Western medicine is crucial for many conditions, some clinics and health initiatives are incorporating traditional healers' bush medicine and culturally sensitive approaches alongside conventional treatments. This holistic model recognizes that for many Indigenous people, health is not just physical, it's about spiritual, emotional, and cultural well-being. It's a recognition that a purely biomedical approach often fails to address the deep-seated historical trauma and cultural disconnection that impacts Indigenous health. It's about building bridges, not just walls, between different ways of knowing and healing. However, the journey isn't without its challenges. The threat of biopiracy, the exploitation of traditional knowledge without fair compensation or permission, remains a concern. There's also the delicate balance of sharing sacred knowledge while protecting its cultural integrity. Historians still argue whether adequate legal frameworks are in place to ensure equitable benefit sharing and proper indigenous cultural intellectual property rights in the burgeoning bush medicine industry. The legal and ethical complexities are immense, requiring ongoing dialogue and policy development to ensure justice and respect for traditional owners. It's a tangled web of ancient wisdom, modern commerce, and legal jargon, a combination that could probably make anyone fall asleep. So, as you slowly drift off into the quiet contemplation of this fascinating convergence, imagine the ancient knowledge whispered through generations now being analyzed by gleaming modern machines, revealing the enduring scientific truth within its timeless wisdom. This story of modern echoes ancient wisdom is a powerful reminder that some of the most profound solutions to our contemporary challenges might just be found by humbly listening to the oldest voices and learning from the people who truly understood how to live in harmony with the natural world, transforming it into a source of enduring health and well-being. As you continue your gentle descent into the tranquil depths of this ancient Australian narrative, having witnessed the remarkable modern echoes of timeless wisdom, your thoughts now naturally drift to the enduring legacy and the immense future promise held within the healing traditions of Australia's first peoples. What began as a simple story about bush foods for healing has revealed itself to be a profound philosophical lesson, a quiet but powerful testament to a way of life that offers invaluable insights for our increasingly complex and sometimes disconnected modern world. The holistic health philosophy of Indigenous Australians, emphasizing the interconnectedness of physical, spiritual, emotional, and environmental well-being, offers profound lessons for contemporary healthcare models, grappling with chronic disease and fragmented care. We live in a world where specialists treat individual symptoms often without seeing the whole person. But for Indigenous Australians, healing was always about restoring balance across all dimensions of existence. You couldn't just treat the cough. You had to consider the spirit, the community, the land, and the stories. It's like trying to fix a complex machine by only looking at one tiny gear when the entire engine needs to be in harmony. This enduring legacy whispers important truths about preventative health. For millennia, Indigenous ways of life inherently practiced preventative medicine, a diet of fresh, unprocessed bush foods, constant physical activity, strong community bonds, and a deep spiritual connection to country. These weren't optional extras. They were integral to daily existence, fostering resilience and well-being long before illness set in. Compare that to our modern reactive approach, where we often wait until we're sick before seeking a cure. They were the original wellness gurus long before chia seeds and kombucha became trendy. Consider the mind-body connection, a concept that modern science is only now truly beginning to grasp. Indigenous healing systems understood this implicitly. The power of belief, the role of ritual, the comforting presence of community, and the spiritual strength derived from country were all recognized as potent healing forces. The feeling of being on country, returning to ancestral lands, was not just nostalgic, it was profoundly restorative for the spirit, calming the mind and easing emotional burdens. It's the ultimate nature therapy, a deep immersion that goes far beyond a quick hike or a stroll in a park, reaching into the very core of your being. The emphasis on sustainability and environmental health is another critical lesson. The very survival of the bush pharmacy depended on a deep respect for the land and its resources. Knowing when to harvest, how much to take, and understanding the regeneration cycles ensured that the healing plants would always be there for future generations. It's a stark contrast to modern industrial practices that often prioritize short-term gain over long-term ecological health. Their wisdom reminds us that a sick planet will inevitably lead to sick people, a simple truth we often seem to overlook in our relentless pursuit of growth. One truly inspiring and subtly quirky aspect of this enduring legacy is the contemporary concept of cultural safety in healthcare. Derived from Indigenous perspectives, this framework advocates for healthcare environments where people feel safe and respected in their cultural identity, free from racism or discrimination. Why is this healing? Because when individuals feel understood, respected, and culturally affirmed, their trust in the healthcare system increases, reducing anxiety and promoting better health outcomes. It's a recognition that genuine healing can only happen when cultural barriers are removed, and inherent worth is acknowledged. It's a powerful and practical application of the holistic principles we've discussed, showing that simply treating someone with respect is often the first and most potent form of medicine. It's a reminder that a good bedside manner means more than just being polite. It means being culturally aware. Of course, integrating these profound principles into complex Western systems isn't straightforward. Historians still argue whether the fundamental principles of indigenous holistic healing can be truly integrated into Western biomedical systems without compromising their inherent cultural and spiritual integrity. It's a delicate balance. Can a system built on scientific reductionism fully embrace a worldview founded on spiritual interconnectedness? It requires humility, genuine collaboration, and a willingness to learn from ancient wisdom without appropriating or diluting it. It's a negotiation, not a takeover, ensuring that the benefits are mutual and respectful. The future promise of indigenous healing knowledge is vast. As we grapple with global health challenges, from chronic lifestyle diseases to the search for new antibiotics, the Australian bush, guided by its traditional custodians, may hold some of the answers. The continued scientific investigation into native plants conducted ethically and in partnership with indigenous communities could unlock new pharmaceutical discoveries. But more importantly, the philosophical underpinnings of their healing offer a blueprint for a healthier, more balanced way of living for all of us. It means listening to indigenous voices, not just for scientific data, but for wisdom about living in harmony with the earth, for understanding the deep connection between our environment and our well-being, and for embracing a more holistic view of what it means to be truly healthy. It's about recognizing that the boring history of bush foods for healing is actually a vibrant, living story, offering profound lessons that resonate far beyond the Australian landscape, inspiring a healthier, more connected future for us all. It reminds us that humanity's oldest practices often hold the keys to its newest challenges. Now, as the echoes of ancient wisdom gently fade into the quiet of your room, let your mind ease from the vast landscapes and the intricate knowledge of the bush. You've journeyed through tens of thousands of years of profound connection, from the earliest understanding of the land as medicine through the ingenious preparation techniques, the vital role of animal allies, and the sacred significance of water. You've witnessed the resilience of a culture that adapted through immense challenges and explored how their timeless wisdom is now quietly shaping our modern understanding of health. Allow the gentle whispers of this history to settle within you, not as mere facts, but as a calming reminder of the deep interconnectedness of all things. There's a comforting simplicity in that, isn't there? A profound sense of belonging to something much larger, much older, and infinitely wiser than our immediate concerns. As you drift now, let go of any lingering thoughts or worries. The ancient bush sleeps under the vast starry sky, its secrets safely held, its healing spirit ever present. Feel your breath slow, deep, and even grounding you in this moment. The stories have been told, the knowledge shared, and now it's time for quiet rest. Allow yourself to sink deeper into your bed, feeling supported, peaceful, and utterly at ease. End of script. Sweet dreams.